We have a Boy Scout here tonight who has completed the requirements for his Eagle Scout. He's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We got a podium right up there for you. I forgot to tell you that. And make sure you turn on the little red light.
Please stand and join me for the pledge. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you.
Hey, Alex, can you put the boardroom on the screen? Not Josh.
Oh, gallery.
Thank you.
Gina, will you call the roll?
Director Avila?
Here.
Director Freeman?
Here.
Director Gray?
Here.
Vice Chair O'Brien?
Here.
And Chair Denner.
Here. Dan, that brings us to agenda review.
Staff has no recommended changes.
That brings us to public statements. First, it's public statements for items not on the agenda. Is there anybody that would like to talk about an item not on the agenda? And Dan, I see Danny Sue on the call, but besides that, it looks like mostly staff members. Do you see anybody else that you expect might speak?
I do not, Chair.
Next up is, I'm going to pause throughout the meeting when there's time for public comment, but if you could identify yourself now so I can make sure not to skip over you. If anyone's here to speak on an item on the agenda, please just identify yourself so I'll make sure to call on you. Anybody plan to speak later in the meeting? I'm not seeing anybody. That'll bring us to approval of minutes.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Gina, will you call the roll?
Director Avila?
Aye.
Director Freeman?
Aye.
Director Gray?
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Brien
Aye.
and Chair Denner.
Yes.
The motion carries with a unanimous vote.
That brings us to the consent agenda. Any questions or comments on it? Are there any motions? Any?
Move to.
Josh moves to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Kate seconds. Gina, will you call the roll?
Director Avila,
Aye.
Director Freeman,
Aye.
Director Gray,
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Brien,
Aye.
Chair Denner.
Yes.
And the motion carries with a unanimous vote.
That brings us to presentations, scheduled items, and public hearings. Presentation of certificate appreciation to Eagle Scout Joshua Decker for the completion of the chess table installation project at Rancho Simi Community Park.
Thank you, Chair. Wayne Nakaoka, the district's Director of Planning, Operations, and Maintenance, will present the report.
Turn this on. Chair Denner, members of the board. We're here tonight to make a presentation certificate appreciation to Eagle Scout Josh Decker. He is here tonight. He did a wonderful little project for us. What he did is, we got a picture of it. Constructed a concrete chess table on the west side of the pavilion area at Rancho Simi Community Park. This overlooks the pond area and the play area, and it's surprisingly, it's a fantastic piece of construction work he did. I never met Josh. We only talked over the phone, I believe, one time about the structural integrity of his little tabletop. He proved me wrong. That thing is quite outstanding. He must have some contractors in his family because the workmanship on that thing is beautiful. I gotta hand it to you. As an Eagle Scout project, you've probably done the best one I've seen in 30 years. So here tonight, we have a certificate of appreciation. I don't have it, but our chair does. So Josh, if you want to come up here and say a couple words.
Josh, my first question for you, I might have given away earlier, but what's your favorite local park?
I like Rancho Simi Park, just off of Royal.
And I know that there's a new chess table there, but before that you liked it. What did you like about it?
I really like just the whole feel of the park with the pond and everything and the ducks. It's just been a really nice place to go.
Then for those that don't know, what inspired your project?
Chess is something that I've always really loved doing, and this vision of being able to go to the park and just sit down and play a game with friends or even just a stranger was something I really wanted to make happen.
You put a way to collect the pieces on the back, and I'm wondering how that's going. Has anyone taken those chess pieces?
Since I've gone back to see it, we've only had one piece go missing, a single pawn, which fortunately we were able to replace. So,
Nice. Well, other board members, do you have any comments or questions for Josh?
Oh, it looks awesome, the table, but it looks really good, really good craftsmanship.
thank you.
Josh, I'm going to tell you that when Wayne gives that praise, he means that seriously because he's exacting in detail about our parks, and he has high expectations to have them be nice for the public. So when he's impressed, that's really something. I'm going to come up there and give you the certificate. And Teresa's probably going to take a picture. I didn't give her a heads up about that. We'll do it right here. Don't be over here. You'll be on that side. I was a first class Boy Scout. I should have kept going. But you did. So this is for you. Thank you. Congratulations.
Hey Josh, have you are you official yet? Have you done your paperwork?
Yes, I have. I had my board review back in September, and I'm officially an Eagle Scout now.
Congratulations. I know that's usually the hardest part.
Thank you.
Josh, if you didn't know, Director Gray, Josh Gray is also an Eagle Scout. So knowing that process, we're proud of you, and we also want to thank your family because we know that although the Boy Scout takes the lead in the project, they don't do it by themselves. There's a lot of support for that, whether it's just driving people around or helping out with that. So thank you to the family as well.
I'm amazed at the detail of the wood placement, perfection of it. Good for you. That's an art.
Thank you. That brings us to item 9B of new business. I apologize, 7B, under presentation scheduled items and public hearings. Status of the district's response to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic.
Thank you, Chair and Board. Dan Pernick, District Manager. Report's getting shorter, so that's a good thing. We've had no significant COVID-related complaints. We did have a positive amongst our staff within the last 2-week period. It was contracted outside of the workplace, and we've taken the safety precautions according to our protocols. Our programs are going well. It's kind of status quo. Things are opening and getting folks to attend those. The school district is now requiring COVID testing for the non-vaccinated. So our employees that are on school campuses, we're going to have to come up with a testing protocol. We did meet today on that, and we're following a similar protocol to the district. So that should go fine. And then overall, relative to the federal government's announcements regarding vaccinations and testings, we're still waiting for the guidelines from the federal government and OSHA. So we're waiting for those guidelines to implement that. With that, that concludes my report.
We're going to go to questions from board members.
I do.
Elaine?
Is the testing just for employees or is it students as well?
I understand it's for just employees right now.
Just district employees?
Actually, I think it is for both, but kids will be tested by the school that are in our program, and then our staff will be tested by us.
Dan, I know for school district employees, they offer testing and they rotate between school sites. So as a teacher at Roy, I could go Friday afternoons. We might ask the school district, we could partner with them for that, so we don't create our own system, but it could be them reporting to a different school, or it's possible the same site that they're working at.
Mm-hmm. And Brian, just so the community knows, what's the testing protocol for students?
For students, there's no required testing
Yeah, that's right,
except in some circumstances, like if they're around somebody, they could be off of school for a while or get tested, but it depends on how close of a contact, if they were wearing masks and stuff like that. The nurse walks them through and says, advises them what they should do.
Thank you.
But if any of those details are off, they update them frequently with more information. Any other questions? All right, that brings us to item 8, continue business, and there is none. So that brings us to item 9A, adoption of resolution number 2012 regarding holding public meetings during the continued COVID-19 pandemic state of emergency pursuant to Assembly Bill 361.
Thank you, Chair and Board. Since the beginning of COVID and up through September 30th, about a week ago, the governor had issued an executive order which allowed some flexibility in how the Brown Act is administered in the state. The executive order actually expired September 30th, but in September, the state passed Assembly Bill 361, which effectively does the same thing, but then it's just a part of permanent state law rather than an executive order. So in order to comply with the requirements of AB 361 and to continue to allow our board meetings to be conducted under the relaxed, flexible criteria during the emergency, 361 requires that the board adopt a resolution indicating that there is a state of emergency, and then secondly, that there are social distancing recommendations in place. So with that, staff is recommending that the board consider adopting a resolution under AB 361, which will allow us to continue to conduct our meetings in the hybrid mode, both in person and online, as we are currently doing. The law also requires that that resolution be updated or reconsidered by the board every 30 days. So if the board chooses to adopt this resolution, we'll have a consent item once a month reenacting the proposed resolution or continuing it. So that concludes staff's report.
Are there any questions?
Yes.
Elaine?
I said yes. I do have a question.
Oh yes, go ahead.
When I read the actual legislation, I was a little confused on, it says this bill until January 31, 2022, but authorized subject to specified notice. And then on the beginning, it does say January 1, 2024, which means we'd have to renew it every 30 days through 2024 or until 2024?
You'd renew it every day as long as there's a state of emergency in place. So if there were a state of emergency in place through 2024, yes, we would have to renew the resolution every 30 days for that time period.
And from the way I read it, that state of emergency doesn't need to come from the governor, it could come from the county.
No, the state of emergency has to come from the governor. Has to be a state declared state of emergency. So if I could clarify, so there's kind of two options for which you can have meetings under the AB 361. One is you have to have a state declared state of emergency, and you also have to have social distancing measures in place, put in place by state or local officials, recommendations. We currently have both of those things. The second option is again a declared emergency by the governor, but also a local finding that having a meeting in person presents an imminent risk to the public to have in-person meetings. So both of them require a state of emergency. The second one, if you didn't have local officials that are recommending, or state or local recommending distancing measures, then we would have to declare that our meetings were of an imminent risk in-person meetings. So because we're not there, and we do have the both under option one, at this point we're recommending a resolution that makes the findings under option one. If we get to a point where the the state or local officials do not have a recommended social distancing measures in place, we will have to adopt a resolution that adopts the imminent risk to people that attend in-person meetings. But we're not recommending that tonight, we're recommending the first option. But both of them do require a governor declared state of emergency.
What I was referring to was on page 3 of the actual legislation.
I know that Ed has a question next, but Ed, are you able to hear Elaine?
I can barely hear her. My question is, and maybe I'm misunderstanding this, technically, I'm in favor of the resolution, so let me just state that up front. But technically, since there are local requirements in terms of social distancing, technically we don't really need this resolution right now to hold the meetings. My understanding is this resolution would be in case we didn't have those local requirements, then we could still hold our meetings in that manner. Am I mistaken on that?
Thank you, Ed. My understanding is in either event, you have to adopt, the local agency has to adopt a resolution. So Mr. Perry can clarify that, but that's my understanding. What we don't need, what we didn't need was we didn't need to have it done for tonight's meeting. So the first meeting that you have, you didn't need to comply with the Brown Act. But adoption of these findings is required under either option, including the option that requires social distancing, but I'll ask Mr. Perry to clarify that for us.
So the answer is, you technically don't need a resolution tonight. What I am seeing is that notwithstanding the lack of a technical requirement for it, that many public agencies are nonetheless adopting the resolution. Director Avila is correct that when you're proceeding under option A, all you need is the declared state of emergency and the state or county recommending social distancing. However, regardless of how you get into the AB 361 meeting procedures, you are required every 30 days to adopt a resolution confirming that you're going to comply with 361. Seems, I'm not sure why, but they swept that all in. So you don't legally require the resolution, but tonight, but it does. I think it's in the interest of transparency. It alerts the public that the district, if you approve the resolution, is going to proceed under those provisions. So that's kind of a transparency issue. And then legally, you'd be required every 30 days to come back and reaffirm that by a resolution.
Elaine?
Thank you for that, Brian. That was my understanding. I appreciate the explanation.
Elaine, did you have another question?
No, I'll talk to Dan. I'll clarify this later.
Are there any other questions?
I'll move approval of the resolution.
Before we do that, not that I can imagine anyone's going to speak, but is there any public comment? Anybody want to comment on this item? Not seeing anybody. My only question about this or comment on this is, at this point, I would prefer our meetings were online. I feel it's easier to communicate. I don't have to wear a mask because I'm indoors at my own house. And it's easier than having some board members online and some board members in person. I do understand people's opinions about they like to be in person and they like to be online. And I would like it to be one possible way or another, if possible. And knowing that we have different situations and who we're trying to keep safe and all, my preference is that we're online because it's easier to communicate. Now I realize that causes some problems, and I thought of this through. We can offer tech support for anyone that wants to do the meeting here. The meeting's still online, but we can use the different offices so we can have good audio. I like it because sometimes I can see board members in person or online, or members of the public straining to hear each other. And I like it because I could turn up the volume on my own device. Like I could control it that way. But more importantly than my own personal preferences is public input. And I feel like if our meetings are online, we've had really good public input. And if our meetings are in person so the public can give input, and we're not all here, well, that doesn't meet that goal either. So I'm just curious what other board members think.
I have it's not a question, it's a request. Can you please take off your mask when you're talking? I can't hear you. I can't make out what you're saying.
We have a public health order, I'm supposed to wear a mask.
Well, I'm not wearing,
I
I
understand.
got mine down on my chin. So,
Yeah, if we didn't have a public health order, I'm vaccinated, I'm not concerned by as much, but there is one. If we're meeting online, I wouldn't have to wear a mask, and that might solve that part. Any other board members have input on that?
Let me just
I'll
comment
just
that
say, I'm in favor of voting for the resolution, even though, I appreciate Brian Pierrick's explanation, because that was my understanding. I think it's wise to have the resolution, even though it's not technically necessary. In terms of what you were saying, for me, I'm neutral on whether we have some board members appearing in person and some on Zoom. I do think the Zoom option should be available at a minimum as an alternative. So as to whether it's all or none, I don't have any strong feeling one way or another, as long as the Zoom option is one of the options.
Elaine?
I just wanted to point out that this was a major effort of CSDA. It originated with CSDA because they recognized that special districts, as well as other agencies, wanted the flexibility. And so they're the ones that, through our legislative representatives, put this bill together and got it through the legislature. So we can thank them for continuing to be able to have Zoom meetings.
Okay, Brian?
I am in favor of alternative one. That wasn't the question I was asking for feedback on, but I do support that. And when you say Brian, which Brian?
It was me, Brian, at Avila.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will make one more comment, since we're getting a little bit away from the resolution, but still on the topic of how to hold meetings. The only thing to me that is just, if we've learned one thing from this whole pandemic in terms of the ability to hold meetings and the effectiveness of holding meetings on Zoom, I just wish the legislature had gone further and made it permanent that you could have board members on Zoom conducting the meetings. And I've used this example before, and I'll use it again. The pandemic aside, if someone is getting over the flu and is well enough to participate in a meeting, but doesn't want to risk infecting their fellow board members, if the legislature had done it right, it seems it would make sense that they would then have the option of doing it on Zoom. That it just shouldn't be limited to this current state of emergency. So that's my one disappointment with the actual legislation and where we're at. It was a missed opportunity to understand that apart from the pandemic, there are other situations, particularly risking the health of colleagues with whatever a health issue might be. And so I wish our learning from this experience would have had us go further and had this be an opportunity permanently, regardless of whether there was a state of emergency. But again, as to the resolution, I'll be voting in favor.
Any feedback if our meetings could just, besides the resolution, which I'm in favor of, just carrying on our meetings like the school district and the city council online? Any staff recommendations or opinions on that?
Just strictly from a staff perspective, I've said this before, but just in terms of the communication style, when you have some people online and some in person, the process of the meeting is somewhat challenging, mostly for the ability for folks to hear and interact. So my personal opinion from a staff is that if you're all online, the speaking and hearing goes smoother, or if you're all in person. When it's the hybrid model, it becomes a little more challenging. So that's just an observation in terms of the meeting protocol. It seems like if you're on one or the other, the communication is good. The hybrid makes it a little more challenging. It can be done. We've been doing it. We're doing it tonight. But that being said, it goes a little smoother when it's one or the other.
It's challenging, but it works.
True.
Dan, if I wanted to suggest that, besides voting on the resolution, can I just vote on it and my board members don't like the idea, we don't do it. If they do, we do. What's the
Well,
process for that?
you'd probably do, I'll defer to Mr. Pirrick, but you'd probably do a couple, because either one of them would require the resolution. So you do that, and then you'd make a separate motion to suggest that we return to Zoom-only meetings, not the hybrid model. Brian?
Yes, you should make a decision on the resolution first. The resolution authorizes you to utilize the AB 361 procedures, but does not require it. So if you should choose at some point to say, all right, now we want to do all Zoom or all in person, you've got that flexibility. So I think the answer is you should start with the resolution, and then if you have some additional action that you wanted to take that's related to the subject matter of this agenda item, then you can do that.
So I think earlier, Elaine, you had a motion to adopt it?
Yes, please.
I'll second
Option
that.
one, adopt the resolution on option one.
I'll second that motion. Gina, will you call the roll?
Director Avila,
Aye.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Gray,
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Brien,
Aye.
and Chair Denner.
Yes.
Motion carries with unanimous vote.
All right, separate than that, I know we have a duty to serve the public and to maximize participation. And I find it a lot easier to run a meeting when we're either all in person or all online. And being that we're not all going to be in person, and I don't have power over that, then I support us being online for the time being. Any other board members have feedback on that?
Brian, I'll give feedback. I'm going to oppose that. I think we ought to have the option. I don't want to bind us to not having the option. Let me put it that way. Certainly, if it's as the chair, if it's your wish and all of that, I'm certainly likely to abide by it. But I don't. Just like I don't want to have the option taken away of being able to be on Zoom conducting a meeting, I also don't want to have a board member being denied the option of being there in person. So that's the only reason that I'm going to oppose it. I understand what you're trying to do. I know it's your wish, so I'm going to attempt to abide by that. But I just don't like the idea of having a hard and fast that a board member can't attend the meeting in person. So that's the reason that I would not vote in favor.
Josh?
I think Ed and I got to the same end result where if the positions were reversed, I wouldn't want anybody to force me to attend in a certain way. And I think just based off habit for the last several meetings, it's clear who has a preference for what at this point in time. And I think, if it's a question of staff support and IT, I think that's something that board members could approach staff about, and staff has shown a willingness to aid and help that. But I think preferences of board members have been made.
Anybody else with feedback? All right, then our meetings for the time being would continue in the hybrid part of that. And we might change that if new information comes out or different circumstances. I might run a meeting from upstairs, so I'm here in the building, but then I'd be in my own office by myself, so I could wear a mask and speak a little bit easier. So I might do it that way. But I appreciate the feedback. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, item 9B, review and approval of preliminary master plan for the Activity Center Recreation Area Construction Project.
Thank you, Chair and Board. Wayne Nakaoka will present the report. He is supported this evening by Douglas Duran, one of our senior planners, and also our esteemed architectural firm that has taken on the project, and Wayne will introduce them, I'm sure, as part of his report.
Chair Denner, members of the board. Okay. On June 2nd, 2021, the Board of Directors approved an agreement with Henny Dong and Associates for the master plan design and construction drawings for the Activity Center Recreation Area construction project. Here tonight representing Henny Dong and Associates, we have Joe Fernandez, who is a project manager for Henny Dong, and Kira Dong, who's also a project manager for the company, and Douglas. Dan already introduced, he's here somewhere, sitting in the back. Now to get a little more serious, utilizing the conceptual plan, staff met with the architect on numerous occasions, primarily to discuss pedestrian flow patterns throughout the building, the intended use of each room, and how the district intends to use each room as part of the facility. Yep. Behind you or in front of you is the conceptual master plan that the Park District put together. It's a cooperation between recreation, planning, and administration. I think we did a fairly good job of it, but I think Henny Dong and Associates did a much better job on it. I'm not going to go and review all of it or summarize any or all of the elements. You've seen this master plan 3 times. I'm sure you're very familiar with it. Before you is Henny Dong and Associates proposed preliminary master plan layout for the building. Primarily, it is the same and it contains the same elements as the Park District's conceptual plan. What they did is a little more work on it to provide better form and function throughout the facility. And they have a few recommendations along the way for the project. What I'm going to do now is cover the major changes to the building. And then I'm going to let Douglas and Joe and Kira answer any of the technical questions that you might have. The first change is, that's not it. There we go. The first change is the architect is recommending that we move the westerly wall of the existing activity room number 4, our storage room and bathroom, about 14 feet to the west. You'll see that on the green line up there. I'm going to try to hold this here. This is the existing wall along the activity rooms, the storage room and the bathroom. To move it out to the same distance as our proposed upstairs second floor. This provides a little bit of better visual effects on the inside of the building. It won't have that zigzag crossing into it, and it enlarges the upstairs portion of the building, the lounge area, quite significantly, and it allows to do one interesting thing. We had a visual study room up here in the corner. Well, we now can move that visual study room away from the multi-purpose rooms and the party rooms, so we don't have that big congestion up in there. The second change is based upon the occupancy or the anticipated occupancy and the California Building Code and California Plumbing Code. We need to enlarge the bathroom a little bit. And I think Henny Dong and Associates did a wonderful thing here. They took the existing bathroom, rotated 90 degrees to the west. This actually, when I was looking at this plan, does 2 things. One, it has better direct access to the gymnasium area. 2, what it does is, right now we have a congestion problem. The way we designed it, people from the gym would have to cross into the path of travel from people using it from the multi-purpose rooms and party rooms, which are up above here, which creates a congestion area, which I circled in red, in the hallway. And that hallway is only 8 feet wide. What Henny Dong is proposing is to create actually a vestibule area inside of here, and then take direct traffic from the gymnasium straight into the bathroom, and people from, oops, this pointer is hard to use, from the multi-purpose rooms and party rooms to come off to the side and directly into the bathroom this way. This eliminates the traffic buildup inside the hallway. I think this was a very nice design. Did it change? How do I?
Yeah, it's on stage.
Yeah, the cursor's still on.
Press it again.
You aim it back there or up here?
There it goes. I got it off now. The third proposed change is to remove the shower rooms and the stairs that are leading to the upstairs portion right now from the hallway. Relocate the elevator. We had the elevator located right here off of the mechanical room, which really doesn't fit too well because we forgot one little thing. We forgot the mechanical room for the elevator. So what Henny Dong Associates is proposing to move the elevator closer into the hallway, which lines up with the upstairs much better. Put the mechanical room for the hydraulic system for the elevator behind it, create a janitor's room in here, and a hallway through here into what will be the new gymnasium area. The benefit of this is we also get 2 little closets here to store toilet paper and other cleaning items that are necessary for this facility. The third change, or the fourth change, is pretty simple here, which is item D on your staff report. Since we're getting rid of the staircase here that leads to the upstairs right now, Henny Dong's proposing to put a staircase right here along what will be the new easterly wall of the gymnasium area. This actually is a pretty good idea because now anybody that's using the gymnasium that wants to get a snack can just go straight up these stairs, and when I get to the upstairs portion, you'll be able to see this much better. It lines up better, the functionality of the building area is better, and it just works overall. I'm quite happy with that design there. The fifth, or item E, I kept telling Dan we need additional storage for this building because every building that I've built for the Park District, the one thing we lose is storage. So Dan came up with a clever idea. We have a big storage area existing right now that we're using for files back in here, and we have another file room right back in here. This cursor is really hard to use. What we're proposing is to build a partition wall right down the middle of the storage room. This storage room, the westerly wall is being pushed out anyways, gives us additional space, and it creates a storage room just for the gymnasium, and also allow us still to have office files and supplies down here from the office area. There'll be no door through here, so it'll be secured on both sides. Whatever is there on the weekends, we don't have to worry them about getting into our confidential file area. Very nice little design. Now we're going to talk about the upstairs a little bit. On the second floor, Henny Dong is proposing to put a bathroom in here on the upstairs level to service the multi-purpose room and the snack bar area. I think this is a great idea because most of your larger functions in this facility are going to be upstairs. Your dining activities, your meetings, your social events, they're all going to be up here using the snack bar for food. And this way you have access directly to a bathroom without going up and down the stairs or in the elevator. One comment that I received of the Oak Park Community Center that I built is the bathrooms are not on the multi-purpose room level. You have to go down the stairs or down the ramp to use the bathroom. When you're having a wedding there or a special function, that's quite inconvenient. And we didn't think of that at the time, but Henny Dong has thought about this right now. The other nice thing that they thought about is all the sewer, plumbing, and electrical is down in the middle here already. The bathrooms are downstairs. So tying into the existing sewer system to create an upstairs bathroom is quite convenient. It's right there. This little red square right here is the elevator, which is conveniently located near the bathrooms and is directly across from the multi-purpose room. This just worked out perfectly. Quite happy with this. And now you can see the staircase that comes up here, enters right up here to access the snack bar, which is direct from the gymnasium. You don't have to use the elevator to get there, and you don't have to cross it through the downstairs multi-purpose and party rooms to get to the upstairs area. Clever design. In our design, we had a emergency exit off the second floor along the back of the building, which took up a lot of room. Henny Dung is proposing to remove that because they believe that it's no longer required, or they've done their code checks, they're very good at it, and it's not needed. So what we've done here, or they've done here, is kept the same size of the multi-purpose room, pushed it back all the way to the north wall, and then increased the space in here. What I should say is the bathroom here also creates a separate area from the dining area or the snack bar area from the gaming area that we propose up in this top level. And the other nice thing is the back door that I use all the time from my office to go home. It goes right through the gaming room, right to the stairs, and right down to the gym. So I get to play all the way on my way out. I like this design. They really did a nice job. Moving forward on this thing, we're seeking board approval of the proposed preliminary master plan layout for the activity center. We need that from you before we go back to Henny Dung and Associates and ask them to formalize the layout into a master plan for us. From there, staff and the architect will meet with the city's planning department to figure out what we need to do and what we need to submit for the necessary adjustment, which will be an administrative adjustment through the city for the activity center's recreation area. The district will process the administrative adjustment on our own. It's going to be quite costly and time consuming, and the architect has better things to do, like doing the drawings for us. Once that's completed, and we get everything approved as administrative adjustments, so I know there's not going to be a public hearing, we'll allow Henny Dung Associates, my tongue's getting tied, to start on construction drawings for the project. So tonight, I'm asking for the board to either approve the preliminary master plan prepared by Henny Dung Associates for the activity center recreation area, and authorize staff to proceed with the permit modification process with the city of Simi Valley if you do select to approve the master plan concept. Or two, request staff to make changes to the preliminary master plan for the activity center for items that you direct us to change or modify on the plans and bring it back to you at a future date, or provide me with any other direction you like in regards to this project. Like I said, tonight we have Joe Fernandez, Kira Dong, and Douglas Durant. They're going to take over now right after Dan's speech. He has some things to say about this project to answer any of your technical questions. They're the ones that have actually been working on this project. I've been poking my nose in and out a little bit. They've done an excellent job. They work very well together as a team. I'm very surprised at this architect. I think we should have hired him over 30 years ago to do some of the projects that I built. They're very cooperative. They've been working well. They build very little. What else can we ask? And they're local. All of them are local. So I'll let Dan take it, and then I'll pass this off to Douglas to answer any questions with Kira and Joe.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Wayne. Chair. Just real quickly, we do have $3.3 million currently budgeted for this project. That was a very preliminary estimate when we didn't have the architects come and take a look at the building and do some of the revisions they did. So it's possible that our $3.3 million may not be sufficient for this. I am aware that the architect, once they get the direction tonight, will be coming up with an engineer's level estimate for the project, or a more refined number. That being said, I wouldn't be surprised if it came in higher than what our current budget is. Also, just from my perspective and to get a feel for the board, my thinking is, and I think the staff as well, is that we don't really want to nickel and dime the finishes on this. I think if this is going to be a community amenity for a long time, I think it's important that we try to get away from the warehouse feel as much as we can and make it more of an area that we can be proud of. I think that's important because if we establish that standard, we maybe put a little bit more money into it and on the finishes, then it's going to bring people back time and time again for a long time. So just briefly, we have 3.3 million budgeted. That's a very rough number. It may be higher, it may be lower. And then staff also is thinking that we'd like to make it, very nice amenity in terms of the finishes. That concludes staff's report.
Are there any questions from board members?
Yes.
I do, Brian.
I see Elaine and then Ed. Elaine?
I really like what has happened, but some of the things concern me cost-wise, like moving the elevator and putting in a new elevator. That's very expensive. Was there any way to utilize the elevator? I just know that's probably $100,000 structurally. And then on the restrooms downstairs, this is thinking way out there, but we're going to have activities and staff here, and how would we accommodate that when all of this is being modified? I'm a little concerned about how all of this would happen.
I think I better take this one. The questions you're asking were all part of when we first bought this building. This building is segmented into 3 different sections. The maintenance area, the recreation, and the administration area. We could use the existing elevator to service the recreation area, but we would like to be able to lock off the administration area. That's why we need to provide a new elevator. We do know it's going to be expensive, but this way anybody using the recreation area doesn't have to come into the administration area to use the elevator.
I mean, we're thinking long-term, so
That's correct.
It's good to do it right. I just know what the cost of an elevator is.
Yes.
So yeah, Wayne, if I could, on the long term, if we used this elevator in the administrative side on the weekends, we'd have to have the building open and we'd have to have staff monitoring this side of the building because we'd have people in this side of the building. The concept is on the weekends, you could segment the 2. That could stand on its own operationally and this could. So in order to make that happen, you gotta have your own elevator for that middle section. So
it would be possible to build the new elevator and the bathrooms without, and then taking down the old bathrooms, or does it have to be done all at once?
No, these, we still have restrooms in the building here. So I think, and I'll have these guys weigh in, but during construction, when they're remodeling, we will have sufficient restroom space and make that available during the construction period.
Activities continuing.
Yeah, we'll still be able to continue activities and have restroom availability during construction.
Elaine, we should be able to use the existing restrooms and accommodate any activities that are happening in the back.
Is your mic on?
Sorry. Did you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just thinking of costs on the elevator and actual logistics.
Correct.
Ed, you had questions?
Right. So following up, I have several questions, but following up on Elaine's question, I'd like to, how long would it take us to find out an estimate of how much more the cost of the project would be by incorporating these changes? Because I see a number of things that look like huge dollar signs here. So, I mean, I think this is all great and wonderful, and I'd love to see it happen, but I want to know how much it's costing me first. So, would it be possible to get some sort of an estimate on that? I'm going to say, I know Dan said it could be more, it could be less. Doing all this is not going to be less. I'll put a wager on that. So, would it be possible for us to find out how much more, estimate-wise, this is all going to cost us? I have this fear it's going to be a lot more than just a tiny little bit. That's my first question.
Okay, to answer that question is that I believe that at this point we cannot come up with a final cost estimate, and the reason why is because we haven't decided what the finishings are, the materials, the walls. In order for us to come up with a cost estimate, we basically need to kind of set on the final master plan and then start working on finishes, and then at that point we can come up with a cost estimate.
Well, let me put this another way. If you assume the same materials were going to be used that would have been used regardless of whether these changes were going to be made, I just want some idea of how much more these changes are going to cost us. It's not going to be less, unless there's something I don't understand. But I want to have some idea of I mean, I got a feeling this is going to be a lot more than we think. I don't think it's going to put us in the same place budget-wise as not making these changes. And I have nothing to go by in that regard to make this decision.
I agree with your statement. What I've done in the past, before we started working on the final master plan, I created almost a preliminary cost estimate. So based on that original concept plan and the changes, I think that we can come up with a more or less of a cost estimate based on the changes that have occurred since the original master plan that we created.
And so how long would it take you to come up with that estimate? In other words, I want to know how much more roughly we're paying for these changes than if we weren't making the changes.
Let me ask Joe. In my opinion, I think that once I have a rough estimate of what the original concept, it will probably be maybe a couple of weeks or so just to add any changes. Add the cost of the changes that we created. But I think that let me pass it on to Joe because he's basically going to be the one that's going to be working on the cost.
Good evening, members of the board. In speaking of the changes to the cost, I'll speak to a couple of items real quickly. In terms of what the original plan that was given to us as the concept, we're still keeping in line with the concept. The changes I would say that would have for lack of a better term, significant impact are the toilet rooms. Because we have a larger number of toilet rooms, but those are required by code, both for the first and second floor. And basically the extension of the mezzanine, instead of having the sort of notched out section, the extension of the mezzanine. So the changes in the overall scope are not that significant, but in terms of getting a budgetary number and working with Douglas on that, that is something we can pursue in time to get that more in line to kind of find out what were those upgrades, what were those changes, those requirements that affect the budget.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is I don't want to agree to approve something when I don't even know how much more it's going to cost me, when I have a feeling it's going to be a lot. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I certainly understand what you were saying, correct.
Right. Okay, so my second question is, in terms of making these changes, and my first question is by far the more important, the one I just asked. I'm doing this in order of importance. My second question is, by making these changes, what, if any, delay will there be, or how much longer will it take to complete the project?
In terms of the changes that were done from the preliminary plan to our plan, I don't think that's going to impact the schedule.
Okay. So no delay at all?
No, I don't see any anticipated delay in the changes to the additional items that have been added, no.
Okay, and then one last question, and Wayne and I briefly talked about this, and it probably would have been better if we didn't, because I'm a little confused between what Wayne said and what I understood here. So the actual fitness room, is that going to stay where it is? And will it be the same size?
Where we showed the fitness room, which is kind of shown as a kind of a green-blue on the plan, that is a new location for the fitness room. Can it move to a different?
It is a new location.
Correct. Yes. That particular area that particular area right now is encompasses both the yellow and the blue area. It's one large room downstairs. We have now split it into two areas.
Why?
because we have the fitness room area and the adjacent virtual or multi-purpose room that is shown in yellow.
So
You're cutting the size of the fitness room?
Just a minute, if I could add, and not just giving factual information. So at the downstairs area where the conceptual fitness room, they're enlarging that room by 14 feet. They're extending the original size. And I think the thought was we didn't need a fitness room that was that large, given what we anticipate is the usage. So with enlarging that particular room, we've taken and put the gym still in there, in the larger space with the virtual room over there. But the fitness room is a little bit.
So, okay, but so the question is, in terms of the change, is the size of the fitness room under the new plan, is it shrinking from what it was before?
Yes, it's smaller.
Right, and I already thought that was about as small as you wanted to get, so I wouldn't want to see that shrink. So my main concern, I'm glad to hear it wouldn't delay anything. My main concern, far and away, is without knowing the cost, it would be hard for me to approve this. And second, I'm familiar, because I've looked at it a number of times, and I think it'd be a cool space. I'm familiar with the size of the fitness room, and the one thing I don't want to see happen, and I think would be a mistake, is to have that shrink. I'd want to either have it stay the same size or grow, but I certainly wouldn't want to see it shrink.
Okay, so staff, when we talked about it, we don't see having that much gym equipment and it being used as much to need that amount of space. If we think that, and we do. The other thing is to outfit that with that much equipment. We were trying to make this to be a revenue generator, to put all that equipment in there and fund that equipment, and then the amount of revenue we're going to get out of the gym use, we don't think that necessarily pencils from the original goal to make it a revenue generator, not to mention the cost of all of the gym equipment. So that we can certainly change that if the board would like, but that was staff's thinking in designing the size of the gym space.
Were we thinking in terms of membership or just pay as you go?
We weren't necessarily thinking a gym membership size, so I think it may be two different concepts. So we were not thinking a gym membership. We were thinking more if parents and there were kids using the space and there were folks that wanted to use the gym as part of that, we were thinking as a more supportive of the overall space than a membership dues paying gym space.
A secondary kind of gym.
Correct.
Yeah.
Kate, did you have a question?
Couple, well, I had two, now, I had one and now I have two. First question I had, tell me again, you said something about eliminating the emergency exit corridor, or the secondary one. The city might require it, I was wondering, that's question number one.
Yeah, I can speak to that. On the original concept plan, there was a stairway up on the north top of the plan, I guess we would say the north side of the building. And that is not required. By code, legally, we were supposed to have two means of egress off of the second floor. Okay. So we are able to utilize the existing U-shaped stair up in the upper right-hand corner, and then, of course, the new stair in red that we're showing on the outside. So we no longer need 3 sets of stairs. 2 stairs is sufficient.
Okay, good. My other question, just from listening to Ed and Elaine's questions, I'm wondering if it might be a good idea for you guys to come up with a cost estimate for these changes and how different it's going to be before we approve it. Maybe we should table it until we have that information. Just a thought. Is that possible?
You know,
I agree.
What I was thinking is we could move forward because this is so preliminary that if we run into a bump, I mean, we could move forward approving the plan and then have estimates designed, and then we could modify after that if it went way crazy somehow.
I mean, like a conditional improvement of some sort?
Yeah.
That could work.
Contingent upon. Without having the plan to work from.
But if we do that, we could wind up risking putting ourselves in a situation where we've bargained for much more cost than we originally thought. I agree with Kate's suggestion. I'd like to, for a short period of time, table it so we get some cost estimate.
Okay, if I could, in hearing the comments, and I'll have the staff weigh in, but I agree and I hear what the board's saying, but to give some scale as to what's this going to cost before you approve it, I know it's going to be, we're going to have to do a little bit of work on that, but I think we ought to come up with some cost estimate for this project before we go a whole lot further. We may need to go a little bit further and think about some finishes and some of those kind of things. So I wouldn't call it architectural level cost estimate, but some kind of cost estimate where we take what we have in this design, we think about the preliminary design, and we do just enough work around the finishes and stuff where we can give the board an estimate. That way we all feel more comfortable about putting you to work on this plan and making sure that we're all bought into the cost, so to speak. So,
right.
If I could.
And if I may make one more comment on the gym thing, I guess I don't agree with the concept of the way we're doing the gym. As I stated when we had when we discussed this before and when we had the planning committee meeting, gyms are really popular. They're going to stay popular. And whether it is, as Elaine said, a membership or a pay-as-you-go, maybe it's just a small fee, a pay-as-you-go. I do think it's going to be a popular location, especially for parents that bring kids there and want something to do. And so how it pays for itself is one thing, but again, I'm not saying it needs to be enlarged. I wouldn't oppose that, but I certainly don't think it should be shrunk from what the original estimate was. I think we're making a big mistake if we do that.
And if I could, maybe hearing the comments, maybe there's a way we can design the room so we can make the gym bigger and smaller depending on its popularity. So if we do start with a larger gym or somewhere in there, we can kind of evaluate its use and then size the gym according to how popular it may be. So if I could work with the architect and come up with a concept where, depending on when we get it open and we know the actual usage we may get for the gym space, we can, size the room accordingly or design the room where it could be made bigger or smaller depending on how much use it's getting. But we can certainly start it larger if you would like, and if we're not getting the use that we expected out of it after we market it, it could be transferred into a size of gym that fits the amount of use we're getting. Does that make sense? Just throwing that out, and then we could work with the architects on that concept.
A folding kind of door.
That's what I'd have to talk to these guys about and see if we could make that space where the yellow and I guess they call it turquoise. We can look at a space where the gym could almost be sized in there according to what usage numbers we actually get at the time. Now that being said, we're going to have to build it out to some particular. To start it, we'll have to build it out so we can judge it. But we could, thinking longer term, we could size the gym according to its popularity. That's true with all of these rooms. We can change them, the uses, we can increase them, and and I'm talking 10, 15 years down the road, but we can almost flex staff some of these rooms to meet the popularity of the programs, and in this case, the gym, as we get experience with operating the facility. But to add to your point, we could come up with a size of gym that's sufficient that you think would be, what you're thinking is the need, and then flexibly do it so we can either increase it to be bigger to meet the need or make it smaller if we're not having the need at the time. Just some ideas.
Other board member questions?
I had one more question.
Yes.
When you were talking about going to the city, this may be for Wayne, but would that include asking for changes in the parking on Guardian Way?
Yes.
Or would you think that would be done with this permit, or?
The answer is yes. As part of this administrative adjustment, we'd be seeking to get, at least on the weekends,
Right.
parking along Guardian Street.
Okay.
If I can go back to the cost estimate, when staff originally worked on a conceptual plan, we worked on a very conceptual cost estimate. Now, based on the changes that Joe has created on this new master plan, we can come up with a little bit more closer cost estimate, maybe in 3 weeks or so, and come back with the board members for your review.
I had a question about the fitness room. And these changes, what's the either dimensions of square footage? How big is it?
The size of the, let me take a look here, it's kind of small, but I'll tell you the size of the fitness room. The size of the fitness room is 20 feet by 16 feet.
20 by 16?
Yes.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's pretty fair size. Yeah. I wouldn't tell if it was-
I'm sorry, excuse me, 20 by 26.
Oh,
20 by 26.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's similar to like a Marriott, you know, kind of like a smaller one at like a Marriott or a hotel gym is the way it's designed right now. We can certainly make it larger if that's the board's pleasure.
And then as a part of the plans, if there's a family coming here with a child, and where would be the best place for them to breastfeed their child? And what I mean by that is, sometimes not in a bathroom, but next to a bathroom, I see like a cubby, you know, or something like that, like a side area. Is that anywhere on this?
We haven't implemented something like that directly onto this plan, but we can take that into consideration as we go forward to find a place like that. I don't think we necessarily, you're saying a dedicated room, but more like an alcove or something like that.
Correct, an alcove, that's what I was looking for.
Okay. Yeah, that can be done.
Any other questions from staff? I don't see any members of the public, but if there is...
If I could ask, do we want, just to clarify, I'm sorry, Brian, Ed, did you want to make the gym bigger? Do you want to...
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Do you want to make the gym bigger? It's 20 by 26 right
I
now.
don't want it smaller than than that room that I saw, and it looks to me in this diagram that it's been made smaller.
So you'd like it the same size as the room is right now, as you saw it?
Same or larger. I think it would be a mistake to make it smaller. And I do like the suggestion of if in a couple of weeks or a month we can get some sort of a reasonable cost estimate as to what all this is going to cost us compared to what it would be without it.
Okay. Does the balance of the board agree that the gym should be larger? It's up to you guys, you know. So Ed's suggesting he'd like to see it larger.
And by the way, larger than it is in this diagram, and not necessarily larger than what was originally conceptualized.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ed. So you want larger than it is in this diagram, but not necessarily larger. It could be smaller than the room right now, or you want it the same?
No, I'm saying I would like it to be at least the size of the room right now.
Okay, so that's the suggestion, is resizing the gym in this plan right here.
I think my question is, what kind of equipment are we talking about? Ellipticals and treadmills and all of the standard exercise equipment, or were we looking at less motorized, or not motorized, but smaller equipment?
Yeah,
I just think it would be. I think it'd almost be a waste to do the gym if you're not going to make it a nice gym. It's just gonna then the whole desire of like the parents and the kids to use it while the kids are doing things is going to go down. It's going to, if you don't do at least some sort of a nice job with it, it's going to defeat the whole purpose of having a gym.
So to the question, I'm not an expert in gyms or gym equipment. And maybe Ed, you can help me out here, but I would think in order for it to be appealing, you're going to need the cutting edge equipment. You're going to need the new, electronic screen stuff. You're going to need the Peloton type, Peloton's really, but you're going to need good quality equipment in there. So in order to make it appealing and usable, and people want to use it, you are going to have to kind of match market conditions for gym equipment right now. And as we know, that's pretty high level. That's pretty sophisticated gym equipment. So I'd imagine if you were going to do it right, it'd be expensive equipment, and we'd have, treadmills and bikes and, some free weights and things like that.
Elliptical
Yeah,
and weights.
but all that stuff is, it's all electronic now, and it's more expensive than just your sit on the treadmill or the old stuff. So,
Oh, we could have weights.
Before the changes, what was the approximate size of the room? The changes proposed 20 by 26.
The original was 33 by 41.
Dan, I like your idea of exploring with the architect if the room's adjustable. So if we make it 20 by 26 and it's definitely being used, or if we make it 33 by 41 and it's not being used, then we could collapse down the room a little bit.
We can do that.
Josh, what are we about to say?
I agree with that concept of being able to scale it.
So Dan, being that the board has asked for more information on the price, are you requesting a specific action, including a motion?
I can continue the item until staff can bring you back more information, specifically the price, and then we will also bring back as a part of that a discussion of the size of the gym when we bring the plan back. So I'd continue the item this evening, and then we'll bring back the information that's been requested by the board.
And maybe, I'm certainly not an expert on design or architecture, but if it doesn't work in that space, if it means shrinking the gym there, maybe there's another location where it can go that restores it to the original concept of the 33 by 41. Whether it's in that same space or in another space that makes sense, but I'd like to see at least something where that's considered.
We'll bring back some consideration of that, Director.
All right, so we're going to continue this item at a future meeting?
Correct.
Thank you.
You guys good? Architect, staff, you got any more direction you want at this time? Anything that you want to ask the board or be clear on what they want us to do?
No, everything is clear. I think these are all ideas that we can work around, that are simple, that we can make these adjustments to accommodate it. Have no reason to see why we can't.
And you're going to reduce the cost of the project for us, right? It's going to be half of what the original budget was?
We'll do what we can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I like what you did.
Thank you.
We're going to exit that presentation, and then we're going to go to the next item. Item 9C under new business, discussion and direction regarding drone usage on district property.
Thank you, Chair and Board. I think a couple months ago, Director Gray had raised the idea about drone usage on district property. To be candid, this board has never had the discussion that I'm aware of, a policy discussion on the use of drones on district property. We do have some current existing rules that kind of guide us relative to drones, but it's not specific. Our current rules aren't specific to drones. So right now, the way the rules read is that we would say drones are not allowed in the district under the Rule 62. It says motorized or self-propelled vehicles on or over district parks are prohibited or may not be operated. So that being said, this is the item for the board to discuss. A couple of just general questions. Does the board want to allow drone usage in the district? And then secondly, if you do, is there specific areas, what areas in the district would you want to allow them if you do? That being said, taking that direction, we would bring back an ordinance changing our rules to follow the board's direction. There's a couple items in there relative to considerations as you discuss the matter. One relative to impacts to others, fire prevention and safety liabilities, and then the staff report also notes the other area or those areas around us, what they're doing relative to drones. So with that, staff's recommendation is that the board discuss the drone usage in the district and provide us direction on whether or not you want us to bring back any changes to the ordinance.
I see that Mark Johnson has joined the meeting. We're going to take questions from board members, then we're going to go to public comments, and then we'll discuss it in more detail. Any questions from board members? Josh?
I noticed in part of the staff report that it does mention film, and I since this came up, I know I've been talking to some people who work in the industry and who film in the region, and I know drones have become massively more popular for commercial purposes. Are we aware, have there been studios or people who are filming with permits in our area who have asked for permits to use drones, or do we know if they just use drones regardless at this point in time?
Yeah, thank you, Director Gray. We do get requests to use drones. I don't have the specific number, but film companies have requested that we use drones. In that case, it does say that we allow certain things subject to permit. So usually all the filming operations are permitted. So when they ask to use a drone as part of a film operation, we have been permitting them to do that as long as they follow all the legal requirements to operate a drone. And we have been allowing drone usage for filming purposes when it's requested by permit.
Any other questions? Then we'll go to public comment. Any member of the public want to comment on this agenda item? I'm not seeing any in person. There's no one in the audience anymore. And I don't see anybody online. Josh, you brought this to our attention. Can you speak to why you brought it to our attention?
Sure. A few months ago, I started experimenting with the hobby myself, and exploring it, in my backyard and other relatives' backyard, and looked at the rules and kind of realized it is a growing, there's growing hobbyists and there's growing industry, and I think it's kind of there's two avenues in which I would describe as how it's how that's developing. And originally the thought occurred to me of wanting to practice with photography and videography, which is very popular among recreational drone users. And the original thought was, well, if I'm going to be hiking our trails anyways, my thought was, well, maybe I can practice photography and videography on our trails. And kind of reading it through and kind of getting the assumption that it wasn't allowed. And then that's disappointing. I think our hillsides are gorgeous, and I think whenever we can highlight that in any fashion, I think that's a positive. So that was one thought I originally had of wanting to go on these hikes, take videos and photos, and then possibly, if they were quality, I'm not going to promise that I have any skills in that regard. But if they were quality, it was to share it with the district and promote it and talk about the beauty of our area and of our trails. And then on the other side was trying to figure out how to get better at this hobby, and realizing there weren't a lot of classes, and for anybody unaware, drones are very expensive, so there's already a barrier to entry. And then you have to do multiple, at this point you have to do multiple trainings online before you can even fly it in your backyard. But there's not necessarily easy opportunity, to train, you generally want to go to a more open space where you're less likely to hit a house or a structure or a power line. And I think most people's assumptions would be, I'm going to go to a park and go to a less crowded area, so I'm less likely to hit this very expensive, you can call it a toy or a tool, against anything and potentially break it. So my thought was, I think drones are, I think there's a lot of very enthusiastic hobbyists, and I also think there's people who are concerned about their privacy. And I think there's a way that we can balance both in our park district without banning hobbyists in an industry that I firmly believe is going to continue to grow. And I think just as any hobby, the more hobbyists you have, generally you'll end up with more professionals too, and people who have a skill set that they can market. And people who want to start a business doing that. And I know locally there's lots of realtors who are utilizing drones for photography, both aerial and for real estate purposes. And the same goes for construction. I think it's a very marketable skill, and it's one that I would want to foster And so my thought would be not to make drones, fair game anywhere in a public space. I think, but I think we should try to locate a park or two to allow hobbyists to enjoy it, even if it's a limited time frame. And I would also encourage, us to allow hobbyists to use drones on our trails that are further away from people's houses and all of that, and in a more nature landscape. But those are my initial thoughts. And that's why I brought it up. So curious on board's thoughts.
Dan, are we getting complaints? I remember one. But tell me about complaints and enforcement. Like, are we currently chasing people out? And are we currently getting complaints?
To my knowledge, we have not gotten any complaints. There may have been one since I've been here, so I'm not aware of very many drone-related complaints we've received. Currently, enforcement, and I talked to some of my colleagues about this, very difficult to enforce. You got to be there. We got to have a ranger there. Normally we would give a warning and that, but so right now we are not. I wouldn't say we're stringently enforcing it. No.
That shapes my opinion because it's the current rule is you're allowed to use a drone basically then, unless you're a rule follower. So the only people we're punishing is people that follow rules, but everybody else is going to do it anyways.
I think if we got a complaint and somebody was not using it correctly, it's like a lot of laws, it's there in case you need it. So I would say maybe our rule now is it doesn't allow it, but if we did get a complaint or we had somebody that was not using a drone appropriately, we would have the tool to stop that particular behavior. But we're not out there chasing down folks who may be currently using drones in our district.
Josh, what do you think of this idea? We allow it in our open spaces, but you got to get a permit, a low-cost permit that's easy to get from the park district, so we know who's operating them. And then maybe when they go to fly, they're supposed to just log their flight hours. So if we see a drone in the hills causing problems, we'll know who it is. And if we don't know who it is, then we could try to enforce it.
Sure, I think that does work. I think logging, so I would add most drone manufacturers already have, due to privacy concerns and FAA regulations, all drones are already being monitored and reviewed. Every flight you ever take, they verify that you're licensed. Nobody's, or very few people, you're gonna be able to just go buy a drone and start flying immediately. It's already, Ed, did you have a?
Brian?
Yeah.
I was wanting to say, I'm not an expert in this, but I think as Josh just said, there already are there's already federal monitoring, federal regulations as far as I understand. So I don't even know that we need to do that. I do agree that in some form this should be allowed, and I don't even see the reason why it wouldn't. So again, I'm not an expert on this, so I don't know the exact the wording of anything we did, but or what we would allow. But I certainly don't think it should be completely prohibited. It's a fun activity for some. It's again, we should be encouraging stuff like that rather than discouraging it. And again, Josh would probably, again, as Josh was saying, he'd probably know more about this than I would, but there already is federal monitoring and federal regulations, my understanding.
If I could, Ed, following up on your comments, if I could ask Mr. Pierrick, I understand the federal regulations apply to drones of a certain size. So those that, and Josh, clarify me where I'm wrong, so the smaller ones, I think it's less than like 0.5 or some number of pounds, those are not regulated, and those are recreational drones. There's a certain size of drone that is regulated. So I just want to be clear that we're talking about the federal regulations are for what you would call more the commercial type drones, but the smaller, what I would consider just, bought off the shelf recreational drones are not regulated by the federal government. And I'd ask Mr. Pierrick to give us his reading of that as I understand it.
I have a question about insurance issues. I mean, when we
Issue a permit, are we gonna ask for like
of insurance also? Is that, or I mean,
If we could just, I was going to get a clarification on the federal
Liability
regs real
issues,
quick.
yeah.
Sorry, real quick from Brian, just to make sure we're clear on that.
My answer is I don't know the answer as to whether or not the regulations would apply based on weight. I am looking at the memo that we prepared that is part of the agenda packet, and the only reference I'm seeing here to weight is under the heading of applicable federal law, and it references authorizing and governing the use of drones weighing less than 55 pounds. So I'm not sure, Dan, where you are referring to in your...
Yeah, I guess it's general knowledge. MRCA has a policy, and I'm on the NRC board, and I think their policy references drones over 0.6 pounds or something. So it's, and now relative to federal law, I think that's what the demarcation was. So, and again, I don't know that specifically. I just recall there's some size of a drone, and we'd have to look at.
Josh, you got some knowledge about that?
I'm not gonna, espouse exactly what federal law says here or there, but I will add recreational drones are above that weight class.
Okay.
Anything that's under half a pound roughly isn't what I consider what a hobbyist is going to utilize. That may be a kit drone that's meant for indoor use. It wouldn't be used in a park anyways. Drones, even at a professional grade, are very easy to push in the wind, and we live in Simi Valley. That anything too small, you can't fly it outdoors regardless. That I would say probably between, a pound and 20 pounds. And I think 20 pounds is being overly ambitious, is where recreational users are going to be, and even most professional users.
Okay.
I don't know that it would be helpful, but I could go pull the drone that I have that's on the higher end, but is an average size and weight, and I could show it on the camera right now. It's a pretty standard size and weight. It's not, it's not too small and it's not too large, but generally other hobbyists I've run into or people flying, roughly the size they're going to use. Like once you're talking about film industry and all that, they've got things that are massive because they have huge, high quality cameras on it. But you're talking 5 figures plus.
Right.
For that.
I favor allowing drones. It's going to help our filming, marketing. I would like to see the videos shared somehow so that we could highlight them. And I do have a question though about fire hazards. Dan, have we been warned at all about any fire hazards with drones?
I haven't studied that specifically. I did take a look at it on what I know, and it does say that a drone can cause a fire, and it has, but I would say, and maybe Josh, the likelihood of it is small, but it's possible. So that's all. If I could, Chair, I just wanted to follow up on Director O'Brien's question in terms of liability, and Mr. Perry can jump in as well. I'm assuming that if we have a permit that somebody signs and there's a waiver of liability for the Dark Park District, that's going to help us in case something happens with the drone operator that makes them more liable for that. That being said, as Mr. Perrick will tell you, if something does happen on park property and we've allowed the use of a drone, there's nothing to say that we could be dragged into some kind of lawsuit, so to speak, or some kind of claim. So if Mr. Perrick has anything different than that, but I would think if we had a waiver, it would help. That being said, you could be sued for anything, as Brian will likely tell you. So.
Director Dinner?
Well, if that was a question to me, I would say that Dan is right, that merely by giving them a permit wouldn't necessarily avoid potential liability if something happened with the drone, if it would hit somebody or go off course and strike a vehicle. We can all imagine, that's why they call them accidents. We could include some provisions, I suppose, in a permit like we do with other permits where they're required to indemnify the district, maybe to have an insurance requirement that they post insurance. There's things you can do to minimize risk to the district. I believe you probably have something similar for special events when you allow someone to use a park and it's for a special event that it would have similar language in terms of indemnification and insurance. So you could probably do something similar for drones. You don't know how serious the case is going to be until the case gets filed. And if they name the district, you would need to defend yourself, and certainly you could try to recover from whoever owns the drone and their insurance company.
Elaine, you had a question or comment?
Just comment. Number one, whether we have if we required a permit, I still think people would just ignore it. They're going to take their drone out on the park, they're going to use it, and we have no control, like we don't have any control now. Personally, I'm not in favor of drones in the park or on the trails. I think people should have some right of privacy. If my kids are playing soccer or softball, or they're out there and a drone comes over, I would not be happy with that as a parent. It's distracting. And if I'm on the trails, I don't want to have a drone. Somehow we need a place in our life where we don't have electronics always around us, that we can escape it. Once we permit it, I think we're setting ourselves up for further difficulties with people. If they're not permitted, we can just tell them that they have to leave. And if something happens, we tell them that they're not permitted, so that the responsibility would go back onto the drone operator. I think drones are great. I mean, and I see people having that hobby, but I remember when the fireworks went haywire, there were drones up to watch the fireworks, and the fireworks went crazy, and the emergency personnel and helicopters couldn't get in until the people moved the drones, and they weren't cooperative in removing their drones, and it delayed a response. And I mean, I observed that, and I think people are just, I don't want to say selfish, but they're into what they're doing. And if we're going to allow it at all, I'd allow it wherever we allow the model airplanes, and not in general throughout all of our district facilities. I mean, I really don't want a drone when I'm hiking, or if my kids are out playing soccer or softball. That's my position.
Ed?
Yeah, I guess a direct question or rhetorical question for Elaine. A right of privacy in a public park, I'm a little, or a public hiking trail, I don't get that. I mean, if we can't provide a place for them to be used, then it's almost like we're trying to kill the hobby, so to speak. And I don't get that, but that's my comment.
It's just my feeling and opinion that I think the park should be a place where they're not being observed. How's that?
So Chair, if I could, it sounds like we have consensus of those that want to potentially consider the use of drones. What I've heard, and Josh, correct me where I'm wrong, is in some spaces in the district for photography or commercial uses or those kind of things, we might want to require a permit for that. And then I heard for the hobbyist use, we might want to have a designated area for that with some training and stuff. Is that kind of what I heard generally or specifically? Let me finish the thought here. So if that were the case,
designated area.
What's that?
I didn't hear designated area.
Yeah, that's why I'm getting the clarification, Ed. I'm just trying to understand. We've had several comments, so I'm trying to, Josh had said that we were talking about photography and stuff, and when Brian brought up the idea of a permit, so that was good, but I also thought I heard Josh say that he wanted just the hobbyists to be able to use it maybe without a permit, so I just want to clarify that with Josh and the board.
I think commercially, yes, they should have a permit, because there's a lot of commercial uses for drones. And if they want to use our facilities, they should have a permit.
Okay.
Just like movie theaters are.
Yeah.
Same protocol.
So commercially, yes. If you're a user of a drone and you want to go take photography of the open space, you're not necessarily commercial, but you want to, promote or espouse the beauties of nature, and you're a hobbyist that takes photos with your drone. Do we want to require a permit of that type of use? Maybe a little bit, say.
Before we get to that, Josh, I know what you said, but is the flight log logged in a public place? Like if a park ranger says that guy's causing a problem, how easy is it for him to look up who it was?
To look up who it was, I don't think it would be that easy, but you can easily get a record of the flight and the time from the pilot themselves. But I mean, you're also going to have an issue now where people could take off from where their backyard, and they could fly a distance. But I'd also add, now in order to fly legally, there's a lot of training when it comes to emergency situations. It's against the law, and there's constant iterations from the FAA and all the training you take about when is appropriate, how it's appropriate. You're already restricted by design of the drone of how high you can fly, how far you can fly. I mean, there's limited battery capacity of a drone for a reason, and it's that you couldn't fly it out of the city. The most amount of time you're going to get out of a drone is maybe 30 minutes. And I would say, speaking from experience, it's pretty easy. If you see a drone, the operator has to be in line of sight. To not be in line of sight of their own drone is illegal. And it also makes it incredibly likely they crash to begin with.
Chair Denner?
Yeah.
There was a long-winded question from the district manager, and I just want to, Josh kind of knows a lot more about this than I do, just kind of get his answer in terms of how he envisioned the usage in our park district.
I'd be happy to answer that. My original vision was that we could have a permitless area where hobbyists could fly, where you're not having to constantly go to the district or even on an annual basis do it. You have a zone where you can fly so long as you meet FAA restrictions. And I'll add that there's already a requirement because of the airspace we're in. We're already more restricted than we would be if we weren't close to, within distance of the airports we are. That you already have to do an online check every time you fly with the FAA. This isn't a very likely rogue situation of drone flyers, but I think it would be advantageous to have a zone that you could, a zone and or a time period in a certain part of the park, a park or an open space where hobbyists know they can go and, not quite like a dog park, but...
Right, okay, that helps. And then Josh, if I could, if we had a zone or an area that you could fly drones not by permit, would you want to allow drones by permit in other areas? So those areas outside of the zone, would you want to still not see drones there at all, or we could allow them by permit outside of that zone?
I think by permit outside of that zone is fine, as long as the zone is usable. I would also advise, I think, when we're talking about open space, we have so much open space, and there's a limited number of hobbyists. I don't see it as a potential, any real problem to allow open space and a potential park space to go.
Okay, good, that helps, because what I'm doing is I'm trying to get some direction on how we're gonna write the ordinance when we bring it, the recommended ordinance. So you're saying in the open space, we would allow drones without permit in generally all of the open space, is what I'm hearing. If it were, and then there's a zone that's not necessarily the open space, but a location where you could fly it, I would call it within the developed park. So a couple of parks, one park, or a specific area where you could fly drones in a developed park, I'll call it. So you're, right? Is that what you're suggesting? Okay. So it kind of frames it. So I think if I could restate it and correct me where I'm wrong, Ed or Josh, is we would, we'd allow, the proposal is to allow drones in all of the open space without a permit. To allow specific designated developed parks in town where you could fly drones, and then commercial users of drones would require a permit wherever it was used. Is that accurate, Josh?
Yes.
Okay. So that's kind of the proposal on the floor, so to speak, and that's that. If that were the direction, Mr. Pierik and I would work on an ordinance that kind of reflected that direction from the board, and we'd bring it back specifically in writing as part of an ordinance.
Josh?
Do we need a motion on this?
I don't think so, because you're bringing back an ordinance to us.
I don't think, I would like to get some consensus around the kind of the parameters of this. I don't know if we need a motion to do that, but I'd like to get a sense of consensus around the statement I made. Brian Pierik?
My advice would be to do it in a motion, because you've had a lot of conversation about it. And I think that if the moving director wants to, they could just say that they're moving to give direction to staff to return with an ordinance consistent with the summary that was provided by the district manager a few moments ago.
So Josh, if you make that motion, I'll second.
Appreciate it. I do want to make one more statement in defense, and then I will make the motion. In defense of flying in open space, I want to reiterate the cost of a drone. That if I were to fly, and if anybody else I know who does fly were to go on an open trail, they're not going to be going far, because battery accidents happen, and if you are hiking and that drone is not actively near you, they don't drop out of the sky like flies. But if you're remotely near a hillside and that thing goes down, it is going to be so hard to find your drone and do it safely that most people are going to choose very selectively where they're going to use their drone on open space, and they're going to be very cautious. These tools are not cheap, most people are very defensive of them. And I'll also add, most flyers I've met are incredibly courteous and don't want to upset other people. You either get flooded with people who want to ask you 1,000 questions about it, or people who are very angry with you. Most people just want to enjoy their hobby. With that, I'll make the motion for staff to return with an ordinance that summarizes what the district manager recently summarized.
I'll second.
Before we call the roll, is there any comment? There's major employers in our area that require drone skills, from filming to real estate. It's going to be necessary for law enforcement and safety in the future that they have anti-drone technology, which takes training. So this enables people to get job skills and relevant jobs for the future. So I like that part. Not seeing any other comments? And is there any public comments? Not seeing any. Second call on that. Gina, will you call the roll?
Director Avila?
Aye.
Director Freeman?
No.
Director Gray?
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Brien?
Aye.
And Chair Denner?
Yes.
The motion carries with a 4-1 vote, with Director Freeman voting aye.
Dan, it's not maybe not necessarily pressing in time, but just out of curiosity, when would you expect you to return with that?
I would say we could bring it back to one of the December meetings. I'm just thinking of the calendar. It's not necessarily the time, it's what we have on the calendar. So one of the December meetings, does that work? Yep.
That works for me. That brings us to item 9.
Director Dennett, Chair
Yes.
Dennett, can we call a 5-minute recess?
It is 8:15. We'll be back in session at 8:20. I see that all members of the board are present. That's going to take us to the next item. Item 9D, approval for the purchase of 6 new Park District vehicles through California Multiple Awards Schedule.
Thank you, Chair. Wayne Nakaoka will present the report.
Chair Dennert, members of the board. The Park District currently has 70 vehicles in its fleet as of this week.
Nice one.
State of correction, my staff report here. They range from a 1972 Ford utility truck to a 2020 Chevrolet 2500D pickup truck. Over half the vehicles in our inventory were purchased prior to 2003. In 2015, the Park District started buying new vehicles. To date, we have purchased 21 new vehicles since that time, but I must remind you that 4 of these vehicles were direct replacements for the Woolsey fire, and we didn't buy any vehicles last year, or the last 2 years actually, because of the Woolsey fire and the floods. And COVID. That's
Yes.
correct. I'm sorry. I didn't prepare any notes for this one. To continue our vehicle purchasing program, I'm requesting tonight to purchase 6 vehicles, 3 Chevrolet pickup trucks, and 3 miscellaneous Ford vehicles, one which would be a transit van, one would be a transit van Connect, and a Ranger vehicle, which would be an all-wheel drive Expedition. These are all to replace existing vehicles that we have in our fleet. I don't know if you've seen our custodian or our chief custodian's van. Has no paint on it. That's where the Transit Connect would go to. The transit van itself will be issued to the Recreation Department because their van is about 23 years old. The sliding door doesn't work. We do need to replace Ranger vehicles due to a loss of a Ranger vehicle this week. I guess that's the one I'll be taking out of commission for this vehicle. 2 of the pickup trucks, which will be Chevrolet pickup trucks, will go to the grounds maintenance department. One of the Chevrolet pickup trucks is going to be a special purchase. We're going to have the bed removed and have a harbor box put onto it, which is a toolbox on the back end of it for our building maintenance department. Excuse me. All of these vehicles will be purchased through CMAS. The Chevrolet vehicles will be purchased through Elk Grove Auto, Winter Chevrolet, located in Elk Grove, California. Fords will be purchased through Downtown Ford Sales in Sacramento. We did get a CMAS price in combination of all the vehicles. The purchase and delivery price is $211,752.46. I must admit that registration and licensing and registration will be paid separately. We do that directly with the DMV ourselves because we are a government agency. At this time, I'm requesting the board to purchase these vehicles. We do have sufficient money in the budget under our assessment account. It has been earmarked by Dan to buy these vehicles. And I'm asking for board approval and authorization to purchase 6 new vehicles through CMAS with the issuance of a purchase order.
Questions from board members? Wayne, I'm not talking about the cost of vehicles, but just the raw number of them. Is there a way to reduce the amount of vehicles we use? I'm thinking with the Rangers, they just seem to have a lot of vehicles.
Actually, they don't. The Rangers currently have 5 vehicles. Usually we have 3 Rangers on duty at some times. We usually have one that's always in repair, either changing the oil or changing the tires. Actually, I believe that we should have about a fleet, about 7 Ranger vehicles. We also need them for special events and for special rentals. When we have a wedding at Strathern, one of the vehicles goes out there and is no longer used for patrol. We need all the vehicles we can get. Every vehicle we have is on the road except for 3. And they sit in the back here, which is 60, 72, and 71, which is the Altec truck with the big boom arm. Those are not issued to anybody.
Brian, if I could, our plan is to stick with the current 5, to go to 7 at this point. And then usually the, 3 or 4 of them would be of the newer type, and then the other 2 would be ones that would roll down. So when we buy a new vehicle, we'd replace that one, and then the older vehicle would be a part of the 5. So you'd have like 2 older ones, say, and 3 newer ones, or 4 and 1, or something of the sort.
And Wayne, I know many of us have been briefed or read the news story, but the Ranger vehicle this week, do we know anything more?
As in, the Ranger vehicle has been removed from the site and has been taken to the scrapyard. There's no salvaging anything on that vehicle.
Well, what I'm asking is, like, if it was a newer vehicle and the same thing possibly have occurred?
It's hard to tell.
We don't know. It was just an accident, an incident that happened. I can't fault the Ranger. He was pursuing a motorcycle. He just got stuck in the sand.
Is that the,
Just a accident.
Yeah, it's just an accident that occurred. I can't fault anybody for it.
that vehicle's covered with, under insurance, I assume, right?
I believe so. I don't know what the value of the insurance
Yes,
is.
in that instance, that one would be replaced with
So
insurance money.
when if we replace it, that's not part of this, okay.
I think there is quite a savings going through this.
Through CMAS, we save on the base sticker price about 1/3 on the base vehicle. We still pay for all the options at market rate, but the base vehicle itself is considerably discounted.
Yeah, quite a savings.
I don't have any more questions. Is there any member of the public that would like to give input on this? I am not seeing any. Are there any other questions or discussion?
No, I'll make a motion to approve this.
I'll second.
Mark, I did see you turn on your camera. Did you have any comment? No? Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Gina, will you call the roll?
Director Avila?
Aye.
Director Freeman?
Aye.
Director Gray?
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Brien?
Aye.
Chair Denner?
Yes.
The motion carries with a unanimous vote.
That brings us to item 9C, or 9E, approval for the purchase of a new skid steer loader, a Bobcat, through California multiple award schedules.
Mr. Nakaoka will provide the report.
Chair Denner, members of the board, in June of 2021, the Park District executed a grant agreement with Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy for the State Wildfire Prevention Early Action Plan in the amount of $395,000. Excuse me. This grant included the purchase of a skid steer loader with attachments for the Park District to perform fire trail maintenance in the amount of $95,000. Staff has procured a price quote for the skid steer through California Multiple Award Schedules, or CMAS, which is an approved public agency purchasing cooperative. Through CMAS, the skid steer will be purchased directly from the manufacturer, which is Clark Equipment Company, doing business as Bobcat Company out of Wells Fargo, North Dakota. The delivery of the Bobcat will take place through South Coast Bobcat, located in Orange, California. The CMAS price and the CMAS purchase and delivery price for the Bobcat is $82,375.46. This does not include sales tax, license, or registration fees. We have to pay the sales tax separately because we're buying the unit from North Dakota. I believe we paid the sales tax to Bobcat in Orange, California upon delivery. Therefore, the aggregate purchase price for the unit is $88,575.46. We do have a grant for it, which will reimburse us for the amount. That was not exceed $95,000. So therefore, there should be no impact on the district budgets for this purchase. At this time, staff is requesting the board's approval to purchase the Bobcat through CMAS with the issuance of a purchase order.
Josh, you have a question?
Yeah, for my own curiosity, I I'm assuming the idea behind it is to build fire breaks and clear out brush in our open space area. Is that correct?
50% correct. The attachments we bought with the Bobcat is a blade to scrape our trails wider, and it comes with a brush hog attachment, which takes down the weeds. So we can do a little bit of weed abatement a little better each year. We probably can do some of it ourselves with this Bobcat attachment. It's for us to widen the trails and to construct fire breaks necessarily, but to widen the trails and to provide access for the fire department to deploy up into the open space areas.
And Director Gray, if I could, yes to your question, this was through a state fire resiliency grant that was given to, I would call, our region. There were about 10 agencies that received the grant, and a lot of them were, actually Santa Monica Mountains was encouraging purchases of Bobcats. Our trails cost jurisdictional lines, so the idea was, yes, if we had better equipment, we could keep our trails wider and keep them better maintained, and it would help us with establishing more natural, or not more fire breaks. So it was not only a local push, but also a regional, and a lot of the folks were thinking if we had the Bobcats, we could accomplish that goal regionally.
Perfect. Sounds great. I would just add as a personal note, if/when we get it in, I would love to see it in action. I think it just sounds cool.
We'll give you a call during our training. We do get training with this because it is a bigger piece of equipment than our existing Bobcat. So we'll call you on training day. You can drive it around.
Sounds great.
Wayne, I know you said there's going to be training, but how many staff members do you think will be trained on how to use it?
It'll be only the supervisors and crew leaders. GK1s, GK2s will not be trained on this vehicle. It's too expensive of a piece of equipment to let loose.
Are there any other questions?
Well, is it available to the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy if they want to go into a trail that is adjacent to our trail?
They're going to get their own.
They're getting their own.
So they'll have their own, but certainly we could share it. But a lot of folks were getting these, and I think Santa Monica or MRCA was also getting one. So
Coordinated effort.
correct.
Okay. I'll move approval of staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
Gina, will you call the roll?
Director Avila?
Aye.
Director Freeman?
Aye.
Director Gray?
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Brien?
Aye.
And Chair Dunn.
Yes.
The motion carries with unanimous vote.
I'm excited that the state government is taking fire suppression and safety serious. This is one part of that. That brings us to written communications of note.
Staff has no written communications of note to report on.
Then that brings us to reports by board members. And we're going to start with Elaine.
Okay. Number one, I was fortunate enough to go to the National Park Foundation conference, which I found very enjoyable and knowledgeable. Got a lot of knowledge from it. I brought back some in the vendors a method to keep geese away, or to get the geese away from the park in a very humane way, and I've provided that to Dan. They'll look into it. And secondly, 2 different types of solar that are quite good in terms of how much light they throw out and how little spread there is on the light. And they can do the whole plan online. So I provided that also for Dan. And just to comment, one of the great things about going to these conferences is make you realize how much you're a big part of a much bigger industry. And you get to see all this new play equipment, and I think I sent pictures to some of you. So anyway, it's worth it. Secondly, I had a joint meeting with Director O'Brien for the Historical Society on last Monday, and things are moving along. in terms of our maintenance issues and the gutter cleaning, Montgomery Playhouse, that roof needs to be repaired, and that's in the pipeline. Termite is in the pipeline. In terms of upcoming events, October 24th is the Dia de los Muertos from 11 to 5, and our stage will be there. Mark the calendar. November 5th is our annual membership meeting. That's at 5:30 at Rancho Santa Sue. November 7, on the Tampa book signing. And if you haven't seen the book yet, I mean, it is amazing. It's wonderful. The holiday open house will be December 5th, and that's 11 to 3. And if you haven't been to the holiday party, they have singers and entertainment, and it's decorated. It's really, really cool. And then Pat Haven's retirement event will be March 5th. And there's plans in the works for that, 2 different events. And April 1st through the 3rd will be Civil War Days. And then this week we had Ventura County Special Districts Association, Director O'Brien, in this room. And we had people from all over the county here. And Dan did a great job talking about our district. And staff did a great job setting things up. And we had a presentation by Elaine Magner, who's Vice President of CSDA this year, and a CSDA update, legislative update, LAFCO update, a county oversight update, and some other business in terms of paying speakers or other, and maybe having a 50-50 drawing. Because we give out a scholarship. We want to give out a scholarship. So that's what I had. Thank you.
Ed, you are up next.
Well, can I say one more
All right.
thing?
Ed, I apologize. Lane had one more
I'm sorry,
thing.
Ed.
No problem.
I'd just like to comment on, and I'm pleased to accept it as I'm saying this, but Zoom is really nice. And I appreciate you guys wanting to use that. But there's something very special about all the board members being together and learning and working together in person one-on-one. That's just my personal opinion. And I just miss that environment. That's it.
Ed, you are up next.
Right, thank you, Chair Dennert. First thing, Chair Dennert and I actually served as waiters for the So Optimist Little Black Dress event. I've never waited before in my life, so I was terrified of it. But anyway, it was a really nice event for a really good cause. Not going to go into detail here. From my perspective, only marred a little bit by the fact that at times it got a little blatantly political, but other than that, it was a nice event, and Chair Dennett was a calming force for me because he had waited at that event before, so I appreciate that. Second thing I wanted to do is, I really, for the past several months, I've been having brief meetings with our staff directors, and they've been concise, informative. I've gotten consistent information, so I really want to thank Teresa and Wayne and Zach. I have found that really helpful. We've had brief in-person meetings and then brief phone calls as well, and it's really appreciated. And then finally, on behalf of my wife, she wants to thank the district staff and whoever was responsible for sending the nice flowers. She is recovering from her surgery last week. Unfortunately, she's had a lot of pain, but it is a slow recovery. And again, thank you to the district staff. Jill and I thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Josh, you're up next.
All right. Mine's pretty short. This past weekend, I got to kind of do a 2-for-1 and saw the end of the Share the Road ride that ended at Lemon Park. I got to interact with a few people, and while I was there, there was ended up getting to give out free ice cream at Lemon Park for a buddy of mine who's getting married. So it was very nice both to see people who love the event and were getting to enjoy the Veterans Plaza and Lemon Park in general, and then getting to giving free ice cream to kids who are enjoying the park. There were, I think it may have been the first time I've ever heard a child very seriously utter that it was the best day ever. But it definitely is an encouraging sight in how many people were in that park. And then I also wanted to just promote that this Saturday at Lemon Park, there's the Morning Rotary Club is doing their Oktoberfest, where all those proceeds go to local charities and local organizations, and it benefits our community. That if anybody else is going or desires to go, I'll be there, and helping support the community and all the local causes that organizations like the Rotary Club help support. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Josh. Kate?
Yes, yes.
I was also at NRPA, and I went to several good sessions, and I took photos of all the slides, which I can send to everybody if anybody's interested. It would be good. The one thing I did miss, and it was because of COVID, I think mostly, is that we often have like round tables or social events where people from various districts all over the country can get together and talk about their issues. But because we had to socially distance, that didn't happen. So I missed that, and I'm hoping that's not permanent. I'm hoping next time they'll reenact that, because I find that to be very useful. It's one of the most useful. That's one of the reasons you go to a conference, actually, is for that kind of interaction. I had Historical Society and Special Districts. Dan gave a great speech. I like the moving parts concept, and he's right. It is lots of moving parts. I went to on the Tap Boat book signing, the first one. There's several. It was Sunday before last. Anyway, whatever it was. It was, and they set it up great. You just show up, and then you take a number, and then when your number is called, you go up and get your book signed by everybody. And it was nice, and it was fun to see people I hadn't seen in a while. And Pat was there, and I'm not looking forward to her retiring, but I am looking forward to the party. And I had my ear surgery, and it went well. And I'm starting to notice some improvement, but I still can't hear you with the mask on.
I'm sorry.
And the doctor said it would be a few weeks before I noticed anything significant, so hopefully by next meeting. And that's it for me.
Kate, congratulations on that surgery. I know the process can be frustrating and timing everything out and figuring out which hearing aid works. I know that can't be easy. As a teacher, I want everyone to know we're working hard to keep kids in school and staying safe, especially with the staff shortage, finding substitutes. Anyone thinking about becoming a substitute, please just let me know. But working through that, kids have mostly been able to stay in school. And the exciting part is the CMU versus Royal game has not been canceled. We've been able to keep everybody on the field and healthy enough that the game's going on. I noticed that Josh is wearing maroon tonight under his shirt, I believe. I don't know if that was purposeful, but I just want you to know I saw it. Ed, on Zoom, it looks like it's green, but the room is green. Elaine has green over here.
It's not green. I blew it, Brian.
It looks green to me. I like
Not
it.
very green.
But anyways, if you did not get the invitation or the details and would like to go to the game, talk to Dan. The board was invited to the game. We did another graffiti removal. I've updated you about that before, but the next one is likely October 18th. It's going to be a lot of hiking. So if you don't want to hike and just want to say hi to all the volunteers in the morning, maybe you'll come by and say hi to the volunteers and let them hike. I had a Santa Monica Mountain Conservancy meeting, and I'll follow up with some more details in the future on that. but I'm most pleased with the fire protection. Ed, I was nervous I'd spill something at Little Black Dress, but I did not spill anything on anybody, including the people that asked me to fill a drink over their table. So you and I are on board with that. For staff, there was
Chair Danner?
Yes?
I was trying to avoid the drink pouring completely, and I got cornered into it at one point. So I actually survived that too, and I'm not sure how. But I did not spill either, and that is amazing.
I think part of the entertainment is watching amateurs try. For staff, there was a member of the public that contacted us about Sycamore Park and an issue there on the hill. Did we follow up? Did we get a hold of him?
Yes, Wayne and I visited the site. We spent about an hour out there, and there are going to be some steps we probably need to take to evaluate that as the property owner. So Wayne and I are talking about how we go about looking into that situation. So we basically got some property against some houses, and some of the gentleman's private property is somewhat, there's a fence there that's cracked and some wall space that has come down. I don't know whose responsibility it is, quite frankly, at this point. So Wade and I will talk about it, and then I'll probably be talking to Mr. Pyrrhic about it a bit to come up with a plan on what we need to do to respond to that.
We did a guided nature hike at Corbinville, and Nikki was in charge of it, and she got a big group of little kids out there, and we had a fun time. Elaine, I apologize. I know you called me and I called you back and I missed it and I couldn't follow up. It's just been really busy, but I just want you to know it was not because I didn't think about it. Just ran out of time. And then lastly, I want to mention with the news article that came out with our efforts, sometimes the people that get quoted are not the only ones doing work. And I'm thinking of our own staff that organize the volunteers like Nikki did, and being able to do that, and Paul Friedborn doing that good work, it allows the public to do something good. So they might not have been a part of a news article, but I know they did a lot of work to get that to happen. That's it for me. Report by district manager.
Thank you, Chair. The skate bar is doing overall pretty good. We had a couple of kids that were getting a little rambunctious, and the chief ranger went out there with the others and got that situation calmed down. It was just an isolated incident, but we jumped on it right away, which is what we're trying to do out there. So we have the folks out there. As soon as we know things maybe picking up, we send the rangers out there to do some enforcement out there, some education. One thing that's come up is the concept of wayfinding or guzzlers, and what that is it's self-contained apparatus in the open space that contain water, so that when the wildlife are traveling through the open space, they have a place to find water. And the idea is that they're placed such that the animals can follow the water trail and they maybe not come down into the urban area looking for water. So it's come up in the Oak Park area. We had some coyotes over there, and it came up on Nextdoor, and I got a call about it. So it's come up there, and then separate and apart from that, it's come up in the Big Sky neighborhood where they've had some wildlife activity up there. So the Acorn has taken an interest in it. I understand they're going to write an article on it. They may have called some of you. They called me to get my perspective on it. I gave them some comments, but that's just an FYI and a heads up that this issue of watering the wildlife in the open space is kind of percolating out there as something the board may be asked to look into.
Dan, if that comes up, or the next time I meet with you, I'd like to talk about that.
Yep, okay. So that's a heads up. Our new registration system did go live. It's working pretty well. We do have what I call a handful, maybe up to 10 of frustrated users because it's different. But I've got a demo of it, and it seems to work really well. It is different than our old system, and actually more efficient, but it has changed. So we are working with each of those folks to teach them how to use the system. If any of the board members hear anything on that, please let that person get them in touch with me, and we'll make sure that they know how to use the new system. But it is live, and I want to thank the staff for their efforts in getting that in place. We did complete, $100 million has been provided in the state budget for COVID relief for special districts. We completed our application yesterday, so they have our application, and I don't have any idea of how much we might get as reimbursement for a COVID cost, but I will let the board know as soon as we hear.
Do they have any criteria,
Nope,
any priorities to disadvantaged neighborhoods? Or
nope, not in this program, no. Zach and I did meet with the new Dr. Davis, the new superintendent in Oak Park. Spent about an hour with him, so that was a positive meeting. Pickleball, we are working on the direction from the board from pickleball from a couple meetings ago. The staff and I did meet with the school district staff to talk about weekend use, expanded use, and lights as the options to bring back to the board. So we did have that meeting with the school district, and we're working with them on those options and getting that back to the board. We did also, just to let the board know, I had a meeting with Wayne and I with the county, the city, the flood control district, the city, and us to clarify our roles for maintenance along the arroyo. So that was clarified relative to trash and debris, but also to graffiti. So that was a positive meeting, and we're all clear what our roles and responsibilities are along the arroyo. The board, I mentioned to the board that Rotary was interested in doing it's helping us with some projects on the arroyo. Wayne's taking a few of them, a handful of them out on a tour on October 14th. If there's any board members that would like to go on that, we can take up to 2 in the same thing because we will be talking business. So if there's a couple of you that'd like to go on that tour, we'd certainly welcome you to go with us as well. And then lastly, the Senior High Royal game, for those that haven't been, most of you have been, but they actually do set up a separate area for various people that are invited. I've been a couple times. It's actually quite enjoyable, and they feed you and you get to sit in the end zone and kind of watch the game. It's kind of fun, and there's other people from the community at that event. So if you guys are interested, I've been there and it's fun. October 21st meeting of the board. We're going to bring back the concept for the Phase 4 plan. That's the completion of the Rancho Santa Su Park. So we'll bring that to the board on the 21st. We have the final budget on the 21st. We're at a point already where we need to re-up on our golf court leases. And then Wayne's got a couple of items regarding tree removal and weed abatement on that agenda on the 21st. November 4th, we're planning Earth Day Award criteria. We've got to renew our lease with the Birdie Bar. It's expiring next in the spring, so we're going to bring that back to the board. We got a PDF, and then our per capita grant. The board needs to adopt a resolution for that. That's the plan for the next 2 board meetings. We are planning, I mentioned at the last meeting, there's a soccer foundation meeting on October 13th. We're planning on just sharing with them the alternatives we'll be bringing to the board on the 21st and just getting their input so I can have that to share with the board when you guys look at those alternatives. October 14th is an Oak Park Committee meeting. On that agenda is talking about our tree removal process a little more, talking about the lagoon project and the management of the lagoon, and then there's the use of humatoxins. So the board, what's that?
Will that be Zoom?
That's going to be Zoom, right? Because it's difficult over there to set up, and so we're planning for the committee meeting to be Zoom that evening. And then, so that's October 14th, and I had mentioned that we're still trying to get a Youth Services Committee calendared and working on that. So that completes my report.
Dan, I had a question about the foundation meeting.
Foundation meeting.
The soccer foundation?
Oh, yes.
What's our plan to be able to host that where everybody is welcome to participate? And what I mean by that specifically is if it's indoors and people have to wear a mask, we just have it outdoors so everybody that doesn't want to be around people not wearing a mask could go. We have a patio right here.
Right, it's not our meeting, it's their meeting, and we attend it, so I could encourage them to help set that up, to do it outdoors. Or Director Gray and I had a discussion about that as well via Zoom. It's kind of hard to set up Zoom meetings for their meetings, but yeah, we can, yeah, I guess we could set up a little Zoom camera. I'm open to ideas from you guys, I guess.
Chair Denner, if we do it outdoors, will you buy me a parka, so I can, if I'm gonna attend this time of year?
Maybe at the outdoors at the Birdie Bar, there's a little fire pit.
Chair, why don't I, if Ed and Josh are on there, so why don't we'll do it indoors, but why don't I try to set up some kind of Zoom listen in, or at least a telephone line, so Director Gray and Ed can attend via Zoom or on the line, or on a telephone line if they want at a minimum.
And Brian, I don't know why you're suddenly getting stingy about getting Ed a Royal High parka. I thought you wanted him in green.
Next, you're going to require a maroon
There,
parka.
Brian.
I will look into that. There's got to be a storage room someplace. Any other questions for the district manager? Not seeing any. For closed session, there is none. Correct? And that brings us to adjournment.
All right.
For adjournment today, we're going to remember Craig Lamb, who was a maintenance worker for the Park District, who recently passed away. So we're going to adjourn in his memory. This meeting is adjourned.